Start streaming. Just give me a minute. I'm getting started. I have to set up my right. We are live. We are live on several platforms. I'm multi-streaming on YouTube at the Great Johannes, Twitch, some old account I had. I'm live on my X account, Twitter X at JohannesMKX. I'm live on Rumble at /JohannesMK. And I'm live on Substack as well. On my newsletter website, jmk.info, you will find all the info there. Today, I wanted to talk about the main topic. By the way, my name is Johannes Mathis Conrad, or just Johannes MK, or the Great Johannes, and I do podcasts regularly. Try to do them 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Amsterdam time, which would be 2 p.m. New York time. Can't help that very much. I'm based in Europe. And today I want to talk about Europe's future in relation to several things that the USA is doing, that Russia is doing. For example, it was just now today in the news that Donald Trump wants to do business with Russia. And if Russia doesn't come up with a plan within 50 days, a good deal, Trump is going to what exactly? Meanwhile, Europeans are paying the American weapons industry to send weapons to Ukraine. So the US is not sending weapons to Ukraine. They get the Europeans to pay for it. But the question is, will it even be necessary if perhaps the United States ends up betraying Europe by siding with Russia in this conflict? You think that's not a possibility? Because it definitely is. Europe is old, decrepit, dying, doesn't possess much wealth or resources of its own. Ukraine is the wealthiest country in Europe nowadays in terms of what's still buried in the soil, in terms of the resources there. And that's what the US is after. That's what Russia is after. That's what the EU is after, except the European Union isn't going to get these resources. It's going to be decided between Russia and the USA. So, but before I get started, I was just having dessert. After dinner, I had some dessert. And I was thinking of one time when the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe was he was a guest in Israel at the same table with all right. This is weird. I have to finish an appeal for some reason, but this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not displaying any kinds of all right, my life is not contained mentioned in blah 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 blah. For some reason, they say my stream contains certain content. I have no idea what this is all about. Appeal submitted. What's this all about? Why is it doing this? It probably means I have to change my background or something. It doesn't make any sense to me either. Why is it complaining about this to me? Here, virtual background. Oh. That's exciting. All right. Well, I'm gonna. What? Europe for Europeans, not Americans. Yeah. Someone reported me, maybe, or maybe it's my background issue. If that's it, then I'm gonna mute that motherfucker. Background. All right. Whatever it was, I appealed it. TikTok, man, it's always full of surprises. It never really tells you why. It just makes no sense. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the conflict between the USA. But before I was going to get there, I first wanted to mention something about the assassination of Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe was the Prime Minister of Japan having a dinner with Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu ordered some dessert. And the dessert was served in expensive Italian shoes. But in Japan, it's considered extremely offensive to put your shoes on a table. So they put the dessert in the shoes, right? And that was maybe, what was that? It's sort of like mob kiss, letting Shinzo Abe know that if he's going too far, he's going to be assassinated. I was thinking about this because Shinzo Abe's wife recently met with Putin in Moscow. So who knows if behind the scenes, everybody knew that Shinzo Abe was pro-Russia. And in fact, Shinzo Abe, oh, I got reported again, I suppose. I'll just fix it again. My life does not contain the content mentioned in the notice. What are you talking about? Keep getting reported here for some reason. I'll do the show anyway, even though people are being a bit sad. So Shinzo Abe, of course, insulted with the dessert, must have known in the back of his head that he was on some kind of hit list and they were going to have him assassinated, right? And that's I find that somewhat peculiar that these prime ministers and the presidents even all around the world, the premiers, they are just pawns in a big global chess game. And although I think some of them have the power to have others assassinated, like Netanyahu, Putin, right? Basically, the secret services have the power to assassinate these leaders, but the secret services, who do they work for? I've been told that the secret services work for the central banks. That means, who are the central banks? The central banks unite usually the wealthy families with the wealthy corporations. As in the Netherlands, I know for sure that in the Netherlands we have a board of commissaries, a board of directors basically of the central bank. 12 seats, one of them for the democracy, the people, we the people, and 11 others for the corporate rich and the wealthy families, including the royal family. They get one seat. And so you see what central banks really are. Central banks represent the interests of the super wealthy, right? The ultra billionaires, right? And how this works is they determine foreign policy, because foreign policy is what is relevant for their trade, for their businesses, for their multinational corporations that they own so much shares and stock in, right? And so these people, the ultra rich, rule the society through the central banking system. You thought it was a democracy. No, the democracy only has one seat in the central bank of the Netherlands. That's 1/12. 1 out of 12, 1/12. That's the democracy. It's less than 10% influence. So when the rich want what they want, they are 90% likely to get what they want. When the common people voting through their elections want what they want, they have a chance of less than 10% of getting what they want, right? All right? The only time the people get what they want really effectively is when the ruling classes also want it. But the rest of the time, we're not going to get what we want. All right. I love people coming into my TikTok live stream. I'm also live on several other platforms like Twitter X at JohannesMKX. Wait, I can show you my links now because I made this image today. Well, here. So you can subscribe on my Substack, jmk.info, or you can donate or connect to me on Instagram at The Great JMK, YouTube at The Great Johannes. I've got a Telegram channel now at The Great Johannes, and on my X at JohannesMKX. I won't leave this up. I won't leave this up the whole time, though. I'll get it off screen for you in a moment, just so that people can see where they can find me. You can pause the video when you want to do the replay on my YouTube or something. I will also post this video to my Substack, of course, jmk.info. That's where I put everything. That's my central base for all my content, really, the jmk.info website. All right, I'll remove this from the screen, or I'm going to get reported again, right? All right. But today, first, the topic is about what the, wait, let me close this window for a second. What is going on globally speaking? What is the global trajectory for our people? You know that dichotomy, East versus West, that we always talk about. Even I say it very often, the West versus the rest, or the West versus the East. But that it is shifting, this dogma, or what do you call it, paradigm, is shifting toward a new paradigm of North versus South, whereby when you say South, that means China and France, and when you say North, that means Russia and the USA. New paradigm, and the question I wanted to talk to you about today is, what will happen to Europe in that new paradigm? And secondly, on a side note, will the new paradigm of North versus South actually survive? Or are we really seeing the unwinding of the global economic structures that will lead to the revival of regional local empires? By which I mean will China, India, Europe, USA, Russia, these big spheres of power, perhaps to some extent the Arab world, the Muslim world, will they fall apart, and will we return to a pre-industrial time when local empires ruled their regions, such as the Holy Roman Empire in Europe, and that was it? And we basically, globalism is going to collapse into smaller spheres of power, which is my idea. I see my live viewer count going up again. That means I must have won the appeals just a minute ago. I don't know what it was. I think it was I was showing an illegal background or something. Let me get rid of that for a second so that I don't forget for the next time. No illegal backgrounding, apparently. Whatever, you know. All right, I've prepared a bit of a monologue. I'm gonna read that. It's probably 10 minutes or so. And then I'm gonna come back to all the your comments and go over those, and we can debate more for as long as I need to, or for as long as it's fun, right? All right, now imagine if the United States would betray Europe by siding with Russia, but only after we sacrificed German and Polish soldiers in that meaningless war in eastern Ukraine. And imagine that then France, now that Germany is out of the way, France would lead the European Union toward alliance with China. Try to imagine it. France with China and Russia with the USA. What does that leave for the rest of Europe and the rest of the world? We're going to talk about that. Will we become in Europe, for example, merely the labor slaves, the cheap labor, the low-wage slaves to the Chinese economy, the Chinese middle class? Are we Europeans going to become the migrants migrating to China for a better life? A report by French parliamentarians titled Number 1588 raised eyebrows last week. It was published on the official website of the Assemblée Nationale, the National Assembly, the Parliament of France, claiming that the present European Union laws are too pro-American. And you may have known about this issue with Macron in France, President Emmanuel Macron of France. He wants European autonomy, but he thinks he will achieve that by allying with China against the USA, right? So Europe, say these radical leftist authors of the La France Insoumise political party, should pivot toward China. But meanwhile, Trump's USA is indeed flirting with Russia. Trump was in the news just today because Trump wants to have a deal with Russia over the resources in Ukraine. So Ukraine, I told you, is the wealthiest country in Europe nowadays in terms of what's still buried in the ground, the resources, the materials, the raw materials. Russia has conquered the eastern part of Ukraine, which is where most of these resources are, the most valuable ones. And the USA wants to have a deal. So the short answer is that a new geopolitical constellation is emerging, no longer explained in terms of East versus West, but soon in terms of North versus South. The question is whether the European Union as we know it today will still remain intact, or whether Northern and Southern Europe are going to split up accordingly along the borders of the Rhine and the Danube and the Alps, for example. One thing is for sure, namely, that any change in the global status quo implies a diminishing American influence under a rising Chinese star. Because the USA today is the world superpower, any change in this constellation implies that the US is losing power. And it is. The United States is losing power. Western elites may benefit greatly from pivoting toward Russia and China, but their people will suffer dearly. Concerning France, all this has something to do with the way French elites make a profit. For example, France presently controls several West African nations. It's called France's hidden empire in Western Africa, including two of the largest cocoa producers, namely Ghana and Ivory Coast. And you understand that France is the one importing all that cocoa, or at least using it to produce overpriced French bonbons and Swiss branded chocolate. Now, chocolate is just one example of what France is doing. But France's hidden West African empire grants it the resources it needs for selling overpriced fluff to the world, such as French cuisine and luxury goods. You know, you have these super luxury brands in France. They make a ton of money. I think the richest person in Earth is one of these French. No, it's not Elon Musk. I mean, after Elon Musk, like the richest person is going to be some French guy who owns this luxury clothing brands or whatever. But they're going to sell nowadays. France is selling most of its products nowadays to the Chinese middle class. Their cheese and their wine, all of it is going to China. So this is why, after all, French President Macron, a few months ago, or was it last year, visited Xi Jinping, pitching precisely this idea of so-called, quote-unquote, European independence, European autonomy from the USA, but which in practice just means Europe pivoting toward Chinese-style techno-communism for European citizens. That means we're going to get those devices, those apps on your phone that show you whether you've been a good citizen or not, right? If you have a low score, you won't be allowed to use escalators anymore. You'll have to walk up. Things like that, right? So when Moscow then, by word of the Kremlin last week, officially declared France its primary enemy in Europe, the Kremlin didn't just do so because France, unlike Germany and Poland, has nuclear weapons. No, France has such nuclear weapons because the nation of this trans lover Emmanuel Macron has to protect its commercial interests in the African colonies. The chocolate, the jewelry, other materials for producing clothing. It sources those from countries such as Burkina Faso. Putin's Russia and the Russian special forces are, of course, despite this war in Ukraine, Russians are also very much active in Western Africa, threatening to conquer these former French colonies. In the nation of Burkina Faso, for example, a man named Ibrahim Traoré has seized the nation's throne. But of course, we're smart and we know that in the shadows, there's the help of the Russian forces, thus prying Burkina Faso away from French influence. I need a sip of water. My name is Johannes MK, Great Johannes. And this is serious. With the help of Russia and China, Burkina Faso, a West African nation, has managed to build an infrastructure of its own, including factories, manufacturing plants, and so that it can now produce its own wealth, meant to be exported to Russia and China, of course, to serve other people's middle classes. Just recently, this military leader, Traoré, declared it will no longer export any of its national treasures to European buyers. Burkina Faso has also revamped its justiciary in local dress. They used to wear those wigs from the British era. Seriously, the judges in Burkina Faso used to look like the judges in Britain. total nonsense. Now they have this beautiful African dress, which I totally approve of. And Burkina Faso has also vowed to establish its own central bank. Hold on. My voice is cracking up for some reason. This level of African independence makes perfect sense for Africans. As long as they are aware that Russia and China will ultimately become their new masters. They're only swapping out European masters for Eastern masters. Right? Concerning the war in Ukraine, Putin, of course, will not even attempt to conquer all of Ukraine. He doesn't need to, since the largest stores of most valuable resources are buried in the Donbas region of the east of Ukraine, which Russia has already successfully captured, despite all the hysterical Western media outlets trying to manifest victory. Have you noticed how Western media, the newspapers and so on, they are always saying that, oh, we're winning, we've defeated Russia, Russia is dying. But no, Russia has won. That's why Trump is now forced to do deals with Russia. Russia's war has already switched from being offensive to being defensive. They're just defending what they've captured. They've captured the Donbas regions, which is what they wanted. The store of Ukrainian wealth is so great that it makes Ukraine the richest country in Europe in terms of resources, that Putin has already gained the leverage now to win over corporate America. Why fight an enemy if you can just do deals with them and make more money? Meanwhile, you get the European suckers to buy your weapons from the weapons industry, right? They will be shipped to Ukraine, but they will never be effectively used anymore. European taxpayers are just a bunch of morons at this point, throwing their money away, for something that has already been decided against them. And so an alliance with Russia is about to become beneficial to the US regime. This is why you saw Secretary of State Marco Rubio shake hands with the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov. And it's why Putin all of a sudden offered the USA support to protect Israel. You got to be kidding me. With access to Ukrainian wealth via Russian channels, the Americans no longer need an impoverished Europe. The USA can then stop having to defend Europe, offering Americans an enormous relief of costs spent, for example, on defending its allies in NATO. The break between Europe and the USA, therefore, is real and shall prove everlasting. It's over. There is no more NATO alliance. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which originally included Western Europe and the USA and Canada and so on, the Atlantic nations. And the politics of this NATO alliance is used to be called Atlanticism, right? But it's over. It's over. There's no more alliance with the USA and Europe. And so France is looking for a connection with China. We are pivoting from the East-West dogma toward the North-South new paradigm, however, only in preparation of a wider global collapse. The result will be a world falling apart into its former regional spheres of influence. And that opens up a particular opportunity for a German revival during the second half of this century, for which we in Europe must prepare. For now, a German alliance with Russia remains unlikely. After all, the Nord Stream pipelines have been sabotaged by the US and Britain, right? For a reason, to cut Germany loose, and for another reason, to destroy the German economy. Since linking up German industry and the EU markets, by extension, with Russian resources poses a mortal threat to the Anglo-American empire, to the USA and Britain. As long as the US can afford to keep its foot in Germany's mouth, the German economy will continue to wither away into irrelevance. They're going bankrupt, and that means Northern Europe is going bankrupt. But once the American economy itself begins to crumble under the weight of its own unmanageable diversity, its Indian scammers, and the revolt of the white warrior class against its own government, then Germany and the Germanic peoples of Europe could reassert themselves as a sort of new Holy Roman Empire, dominating the European continent in that post-global era where we all return to our regional empires. And then Germany could have that Bismarckian diplomatic alliance with Russia and its resources. For us Europeans, we may find that we shall have to become the new Iranians, by which I mean a society ruled as a theocracy, in our case Christian, slowly chipping away at American power until we emerge from the rubble as the new dominant force in Europe, while defeating France and regaining independence from future China. I can foresee Europe, after the collapse of the global economy, returning to a system of feudal states where slavery will be reintroduced and darker-skinned immigrants living in Europe will be declared the property of their masters. But if we don't rebuild Europe into a Christian theocracy, then we shall become a third world Islamic backwater ruled by foreign tyrants. The choice is ours. Meaning we have no choice. There's only one thing we can do. All right. I thought that was an enjoyable speech. In all my thinking, I return to the same principle that I believe Europe has a potential to revive itself, mainly through a strong Germany leading a sort of new Holy Roman Empire. And we will do so, we will reboot our civilization with the help of a sort of spiritual infusion to reinvigorate ourselves with ancestral spirits, so to speak. And then by extension, we can establish in the post-globalist world an empire of our own. All right, let me go over some of your comments because I was talking the whole time, so I missed what you were saying. But let's do a little interactivity here and see if you have anything to say about what do you guys think, for example, is going to be the future of Europe? Can we beat back diversity, and how would you do it? I think we're looking at a new caste system. I mean, basically, if you're importing Indians and so on who live by their caste system anyway, that's going to be an easy deal. And in terms of the Muslims and the Africans, we'll put them in their place, where they are accustomed to. All right. Right? All the crazy astrologists are saying that Trump is going to be assassinated by July. I don't think so. Trump is a great, great ally of Israel, so they're not going to assassinate him. Do you know who they did assassinate? The only Catholic president. I don't know, the first Catholic president, Kennedy. They say Biden is also Catholic, but I think he wasn't, but that's all right. Yeah, the USA is colonizing Europe, right? Johannes for Chancellor. Yeah, that would be nice. Is Somalia a peculiar strategic location? Should we colonize it? No. The USA is not good for the whole world. Yeah, well, that's obvious, right? All right. They plan to starve at least 70% of the world, right? We might have to do that, yeah. French cuisine is superior, really? I never eat French food. What is even French food? All I know is the quiche. So I'm very uncultured. Quiche and duck or something, right? All right. Exactly. The social credit system is coming to Europe first, though. They're going to want to introduce that in Europe, primarily because we're going to be a dwindling civilization with increasingly or decreasing energy supplies available to us. And then you're going to get that nasty system of old women trying to control everybody's behavior. That's basically what the social credit system is for. To keep you in check. Have you watered your lawn today, you racist? Don't you know that cleaning your streets is white supremacy? This is, I'm not what misinformation about China. I'm telling the truth, man. So how European are masters of Africa, and what value does Europe bring to Africa? We civilized Africa. We gave them all our technology. I mean, if Africans don't like us, just give back our technology. Right? I think Israel is extremely opportunist. They will do whatever is in their best interest. If only we in Europe could do that too. Right? All right. I'm from the Netherlands, yeah. It might be tribal, and so, but from tribal conditions in Europe, we would have to then forge a new sort of Holy Roman Empire out of it and get the tribes to at least adopt Christianity as their religion, right? To make ourselves strong. Biden the Shabbos guy, yeah, probably. All right, the specific topic for tonight was we're pivoting from the East-West paradigm toward the North-South paradigm, where France is kissing up with China and Trump is doing deals with Russia. And where does that leave Europe? What is going to be Europe's future if the intention is to destroy German economy and turn Germany into an agrarian country, right? By keeping Germany down, America can then do deals with Russia. But if Germany were allowed to be strong economically, then Germany would be making those deals with Russia. And so that's why the USA has an interest in destroying Germany, or at least controlling Germany. All right. Do white people things, yeah. So what were the ideological foundations that justified European imperial expansion? We had started the industrial age, and we had begun producing consumer products that we could export to the whole world. Now there were two problems. We needed markets to sell our stuff. We had shoes and clothing, right? Apparel, technology, watches, all sorts of military equipment. And we needed bigger markets. So we started sailing out to find these markets. And then we also discovered that those markets also had more resources to give us that we could use for our factories. So this was perfectly moral, right? Yeah, we all become equally poor, right? We're all going to be the same. That's what they want for us, but I don't think that's healthy, right? Right. What did your ancestry DNA test say? I am 100% Northwest European. I'm very boring genetically. Although if you go back a few centuries, I have like Danish Viking ancestry. I have Celtic Anglo ancestry from southwest of England, from the Bath region. And I have, of course, a large number of Germanic ancestry, also from the Eastern Germanics, like the what were you called, the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. Yeah. You're 100% North European. Awesome. You see those Americans, they're all over the place, but I suppose Europeans are a bit simpler, genetically more solid, perhaps. Yeah. Anglo-Saxon, awesome, yeah. Right, that's the plan. They will drag us from the streets like in Ukraine to make us go to war. Uh, have you seen that? Right? Have you seen that? Right? Right. I don't know about Ancestry. You used to have 23andMe and Ancestry.org, and both of them told you quite a lot. There's another website. You can actually download your DNA data file and then upload it to other websites that tell you even more. There's a website that links your DNA to actual skeletons that they dug up and tested the DNA for them, so you can see which actual people you are related to. I can read your comments, but maybe I just don't read them, right? Not out loud. How many foreigners are in the Netherlands? Depends on how you measure it. But if you take the population of 1950 as the default population, say call them Dutch and white, then you go to 2025, 75 years later, we have about 13 million native white Europeans and about 5 million non-natives. But among the 5 million non-natives, half of those are white immigrants, say from Germany or France or England or Belgium and so on. So we have about, technically speaking, about 2.6 or so, 2.8 million non-white immigrants living in Europe. Mostly like Moroccans, Turkish people, Indians, Indonesians, some Chinese. Right, that's what we have. Malaysians, Korea, all those people. Maluku people. All right. Liberalism is a problem. I think it's just a flaw of one's character. I think liberals in general are just a bit feeble, a bit childish, childlike, and that's why they're like that. They just can't deal with the real world, and so they actually need our protection. But of course, they hate us for giving that protection, because protection means that we're not equal anymore, right? We're strong. No, Western Turkish are somewhat like Greek people, but overall, the majority of Turkish people are definitely not white people. Like the ones living in Ankara and so on, they are very brown people with Semitic noses and so on. They're not white people. Right. What should Europe's position be if the US adopts isolationist policies? The USA is actually adopting a policy of allying itself with Russia for the Russian resources while keeping its foot on Germany to keep Germany down. So they're not isolationist at all. They're just going to cut loose from Europe. They're going to throw Europe under the bus effectively. And yet our European leaders are just too incredibly stupid to see that coming. I can see it coming from a mile away. But our NATO leader, Mark Rutte, the former Dutch premier, he is in charge of NATO, but of course he does the Americans' bidding. He doesn't care. I mean, he has no morals, so he just works for whoever supplies him with, what you're not allowed to say. I think right wing is all about health and strength and self-improvement, and also about setting really exciting goals that you cannot achieve on your own, but that you will have to work together with your people to achieve. We always have the story of the hero, but the hero is supported by his people. And so, yes, I want to see more heroes be brought to light, the strong and the healthy, the examples, right? And the society should be there backing them, and we don't have that. That's the problem with leftist liberalism. It is so morbidly full of hatred. Leftists don't want anyone to succeed, and so that's why they will even hunt down their heroes and kill their heroes. That's insane. We need to restore sanity. Being right-wing is all about sanity, right? It's about being healthy. Anima sana in corpore sana. A healthy mind and a healthy body, with a healthy spirit, I would add. That's what we need. We don't need that drab, morbid death cult of leftism where you have all these vegans because they're not eating protein. They feel like dying all the time. They don't even want to live. They hate life. They hate humanity. They hate children. They want to abort healthy children. They want to castrate children, make them transgender, give them a new made up 1 out of 65 different crotches that you can choose from or something. They're crazy. They're absolutely hateful people. So it's a bit of an odd comment here to claim that the right-wingers are full of hate. We are the only ones who know what love is, because the leftists were raised without love. They don't know what love is. They are full of hate. Absolute hate group. Never forget that. The liberals, the leftists, are the extremists. We are the normal. We are the antidote to the sickness. We're the doctors. Whoa. Lefties are the worst, yeah. What's the main difference between Dutch and Germans? Dutch are a little bit mixed with French and English people. Whereas I'd say Germans are a bit more patriarchal and a bit more technologically minded. They're better with machines than Dutch people. Dutch people are better at trade, and the Germans are better at crafting machinery. All right. The left doesn't like inequality because, to put it harshly, they're inferior individuals. Hey, you didn't hear me say it, but I suppose it sounds true. Farmers will be the new doctors, really. Yeah, if they give us actual food. I went to the supermarket today, and in the Netherlands we have our delicatessen, frikandel. And I was reading the ingredients list, and it's down to like 70% real meat. It's 30%, I don't know what it is, grain. They put grain in your frikandels. Don't eat those things anymore. It's like 14% pork fat and 63% chicken scraps. And then the other 25% or so, what the hell is that? You know, it's vegan. They're trying to turn your frikandels into vegan frikandels, man. Why aren't Dutch people patriotic and nationalistic? That's a very strange question, yeah, because although we have top quality food available to us, high protein, milk, cheese, and a lot of meat, because we have a ton of dairy farmers and meat cow farmers. And yet, at the same time, Dutch people on average are extremely leftist. And I don't understand why. Is it maybe a disease of luxury that once you become so well off for a while, say for 50 or 80 years, that we've had this since World War II, that you become lazy or something? You don't want to put up a fight anymore. You don't want to hurt your hands boxing, you know? That's probably what happened to Dutch people. There's something psychologically amiss with them. I tried to describe it, and I'd say, like, based on the way my Dutch TikTok audience responds to me, I'd say there's a lot of good people, a lot of supporters, but there's this section of people, maybe 25% of them, who may simply be cognitively impaired. And I'm talking about the white people. Dutch people are so naive, yeah. But I could never really think of a good explanation for it. Why are the Dutch people so naive? Did you know, of all the European countries, Dutch people say They have the highest score believing the news. I think like 60 or 70% of Dutch people believes the news is the truth. No one else believes that. It's like 20% in Greece, 10% in Italy. But in the Netherlands, 70% or so of people believe that the news is real. But they hate me when I tell them the truth. And that's, I just don't get it. Yeah. Right. Majority of people are fed up with things. Yeah. They're fed up with the cost, I suppose. Everything's getting more expensive. Can't afford houses. And a good 25% of Dutch people say they want to emigrate. They want to leave the Netherlands. It's not a joke. They really want to leave. Are the British people also very weak? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you have those riots, of course, last year, right? The summer when 3 girls were killed by the Ruda Cubana fellow. I remember that. But then there was some rioting going on, but you were also so cruelly punished. There's not much you can say in Britain without going to jail, you know? You can't say anything. It's way worse than in the Netherlands, even. But in the Netherlands, you won't even need that much repression of the people because the people are stupid enough to believe in their lies anyway. Right. England is a dictatorship, yeah. The people resisting get pounced on by counter protesters, yeah. That too, but you know, the Antifa people, right? And Sweden too, huh? It's very leftist, especially the women, yeah. Yeah. But Swedish men too, I think, yeah. I wonder why, you know? Why do people believe in the stories that immigration and diversity are good for you? Let's turn Sweden into an Islamic state. Let's turn Germany into a Turkish caliphate. Let's turn Britain into new Hindustania. Why? Right? Why are you doing this, right? Yeah. The world leaders in charge are just pawns on a chessboard. They're not really in charge, no. All right, let me show you my links for a moment again, my credentials. If you want to support me, I prefer you go to Substack, jmk.info, and subscribe there. You can get a free subscription. You can see all my videos. Or if you want to have a paid subscription monthly, it's like $8 or something. But you get some special articles and you support me so that I can keep doing this and want to get ahead in this, right? Then you have other channels you can find. You can connect with me on YouTube at The Great Johannes, on X at JohannesMKX, and you see some other links over here. You can also find me there. I'm going to be posting this video to jmk.info and also to my YouTube, so you'll find the replay there if you want to see the whole show. I enjoyed it very much, but I decided I will do like 40 to 45 minutes shows from now on and no longer 1 hour. And so you can watch the replay with the comments on screen, right? They're being uploaded. And I wish you all a great evening. I will be back tomorrow with another topic. All right? Then bye-bye and have a nice evening.